the lowest interest rates in the European community, and we have a carefully targeted set of measures designed to lift confidence and get this country back to work. This, Madam Speaker, is a clear and comprehensive strategy. It is a strategy for growth, and I commend it to the House.
Good evening. Backbench Conservative MPs are trumpeting the Chancellor of the Exchequer's autumn statement as a triumphant boost to an economy mired in recession. That isn't exactly how it looks to the rest of the world. Question: does what Norman Lamont announced today add up to an adequate solution? The boss of Wimpey, one of the biggest British construction companies, gives it a grudging welcome but reckons it doesn't go far enough. It hangs on enforcing a public sector wage round of only 1.5%. Will Rodney Bickerstaff's Newpie, representing some of the poorest paid people in the land, accept that? What will happen in councils across the country which are supposed to follow the guidelines? Peter Kellner explains what it means in the big inner-city borough of Brent, and from there a council leader, a head teacher, a legal aid worker and a charity worker explain what the strategy means to them. While here in the studio, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury will be debating its political rights and wrongs with Harriet Harman for Labour and the Liberal Democrats' Alan Beef. And as the High Court decides whether to let this young man die, we look at the dilemma thrown up when advances in medical science appear to leave medical ethics behind. The government's witch doctors did their work well. A series of leaks to condition us to expect something draconian, and then when it happened, no increase in national insurance premiums, no cuts in benefits, and the aid budget largely unscathed. Instead, we got a cut of 1% in interest rates, a recovery package, and the first public sector pay policy since the last one collapsed in the mid-80s.
All last year's predictions have been proved wrong, but it'd be hard to accuse the Chancellor of rash optimism this time in predicting the economy will grow at only 1% next year. The government has managed to stick to the spending target of £244.5 billion, but increased social security payments and lost tax receipts mean the public sector borrowing for this financial year is going up to £37 billion, £9 billion higher than earlier forecasts. And it's estimated to rise to £44 billion next year. The Chancellor's spending plans stand on one central plank, a tough 1.5% limit on public sector pay rises. If that doesn't stick, the whole package unravels. That'll prove hard to sell to local authorities who claim they've only been given a 0.5% increase next year over what they actually spent this. The recovery package accompanying the autumn statement was topped off with a further 1% cut in interest rates. The big mortgage lenders duly cut their rates. Mr. Lamont also announced that councils will now be able to spend capital receipts, money they make from council house sales, but they can't touch any money they've already accumulated, only what they earn from tomorrow. £750 million is to be spent buying up 20,000 empty homes. There'll be an attempted stimulus to the construction industry by promoting joint projects between the public and private sectors, the London Underground Jubilee Line projects to go ahead. And there are new capital allowances, tax incentives, once again short-term to try to push investment. And there's to be a handout to the car industry with the scrapping of the tax on new car sales.
Well, this was then a markedly different performance from the sort of thing we've heard for the last few years. After the ERM debacle and everything else, it had to be. James Cox watched as the Chancellor sketched out his strategy.
John Major went to dinner tonight with the 92 Club, the group of Tory right-wingers and anti-Europeans who, only a few days ago, wanted to have him for breakfast. But tonight harmony reigned in Toryland. The unlikely harbinger of it, Norman Lamont.
With permission, Madam Speaker, I should like to make my autumn statement.
Last March, Mr. Lamont had to craft a budget to win an election. Today he had to draft an excuse for why it had all gone so wrong. While he accepted his predictions had failed, he said this was against a background of recession at home and economic weakness abroad.
It is not surprising, therefore, that here in Britain, the recovery that nearly all forecasters at the time of the budget expected has still not become established.
A new strategy for confidence and growth, he said, was essential.
But the government has no intention of engineering a short-lived boom that would lead swiftly to higher inflation and higher interest rates. Our objective